Hello artists, welcome to your Rocky Cove painting class. My name is Miss M, and in front of you, you should have your canvas long ways like so. Please also have a cup of water, a napkin, a large and a small brush. For your colors, you need orange, yellow, dark blue, light blue, and white and black. You don't need a plate for this one because we won't really be mixing colors, so don't worry about grabbing a plate. I just wanted to grab a plate so you guys can see the colors we're using a little bit better. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing we're going to do is grab our two brushes and swirl them around in our cup of water. Get them nice and clean. I'm going to just put more forward. Just swirl them around in your cup of water. And then lightly pat them on your paper towel so there's not too much water on there. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to split our canvas with a horizon line, so where the water separates from the sky. So go ahead and grab your large brush and your yellow paint, so large brush and yellow paint. And you're going to find the middle of your canvas the best you can. You can use your fingers to kind of measure, be sure it's about the same. And you're going to make a line with your yellow paint all the way from one side to the next. It doesn't have to be perfect, but do your best to drag that big brush from one side to the next with your yellow paint. And once you're done, you can kind of turn over to the left of your canvas, make a yellow line, turn over to the right of your canvas and make a yellow line. So I just split my canvas in half the best I can with my big brush and my yellow paint. Once I was done, I'm going to go back to my big brush and my yellow paint and split the top part. So I'm going to meet in the middle. From where I made that yellow line, I'm going to make another yellow line going from side to side. So I split the top half in half. If you have any bumps with your paint, just go over and smooth it out. And don't forget to carry your yellow over to the left side and your right side of your canvas, just like so. Once you're done, you want to go back to your big brush and your yellow paint, and you're going to paint yellow between these two lines. You don't want to see any white poking through, and you're going to make little sweeps with your brush going left to right. So this whole part between the two yellow lines, you're going to use your big brush and you're going to sweep side to side. I go over my lines just a little bit to break it up. If you have any bumps with your paint, go over it to flatten it out. And don't forget the left side between your two yellow lines and the right side between your two yellow lines. So you just have this big strip of yellow. And again, you don't want to see any white peeking through. So all yellow, sweeping side to side. I'm just kind of flicking back and forth with my brush. Carry my yellow over to the sides. And before my yellow dries, I do want to go back to my, I do want to go to my orange. I'm not even going to clean my brush. So I've made my yellow stripe. I'm not going to clean my big brush, but I'm going to add just a little bit of orange to my brush that already has yellow on it. I'm going to tap some off so I don't have too much on there. I'm just going to start sweeping randomly can go back to more orange, tap, 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 and just kind of sweep lines side to side. I'm avoiding this bottom part a little bit. I don't want too much orange down here. It's more on the top part up here. And I still want to see some yellow peeking through. So avoid this bottom part and sweep some orange. But I'm still able to see some yellow peeking through. So I did about, let's see, 10 lines going side to side. And before that yellow or orange dries, I'm gonna add some water, tap it on my paper towel a couple times, just go over it with water to kind of smooth it out. And I still wanna see, again, some of that yellow peeking through. If you don't see that much yellow peeking through, you can always let it dry a little bit and go back to your yellow. So the yellow sits on top of the orange a little bit better and doesn't blend with the two wets working together. You can even carry a little bit of orange to the top part of this yellow with some orange, to the top part of this yellow with some orange. But I want to make sure it looks nice and smooth. So you go back and smooth it out. Once you're done with your yellow and your orange, you do want to wash your brush and dry your brush. I'm going to go to my light blue. I'm going to go to my light blue next. And I'm going to start at the top part with my light blue. I don't want to get too close to my yellow or my orange just yet, because I don't want them to mix. I don't want it to become green. So I'm going to give them just a little bit of a moment to dry. With my light blue and my big brush, I'm going to sweep side to side. Don't get too close to this area just yet. We'll give it a little bit more time to dry. But I'm going to flick some light blue side to side. Like so. I'm going to fill up all the space in just a moment, but again, I just want to give it some more time to dry before the two touch. Meanwhile, I can also paint the left side. Get kind of close to the yellow and orange. Again, painting side to side. Down here as well. And make sure you smooth out any bumps. And just kind of flicking your brush, or you're kind of sweeping side to side. And then the top part of the canvas. So coming very close to the yellow and orange, but giving it a couple minutes to dry before I overlap it just a little bit. So I have that light blue left, the right, and the top part, like so. Now that it's a little bit more dry, I am going to go back for a little bit light blue and get closer to that yellow and orange. Like so. And I don't want that perfect line. I am going to go back to a little bit more light blue, maybe tap some off on your paper towel, and just come down a little bit, maybe on this left side. A little light blue, wipe off some of that yellow and orange. Tap, 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 maybe come down a little bit down here, just a little bit, sweeping some light blue down a little bit into my yellow and orange, just a little bit. You definitely don't want to come down too far. Kind of off to the sides as well. wipe some off. I don't really want too much yellow and orange on my brush. I go back there and give this another coat to make it just a little bit darker. Alright, and remember I came down just a little bit with my blue. Once I was done with that, I'm going to wash my brush. I'm going to dry my brush. So wash and dry. So I have yellow and orange. Blue. The blue's coming down a little bit. There's a little bit of yellow strips still kind of peeking through down here. I'm going to really wash and dry my brush. Make sure there's not too much blue on there. I am going to go in there with a little bit of yellow and white with my big brush. Tap it on my paper towel. I'm going to come up into my blue with a little bit of yellow and white. You don't want a perfect line in there. You just want to kind of have some coming up a little bit higher, a little bit lower. This kind of breaks up that line work a little bit. You don't see this line as much. So a little bit of yellow and white coming through up here. Maybe coming down a little bit as well. So yellow and white. If you have too much on there, you can always tap it on your paper towel. And come down a little bit too. So I'm kind of working in this middle where they both meet. So yellow and white on my brush. I'm meeting more in the middle to kind of break up that line work a little bit. So yellow and white. I can even have some curve over to the left and to the right. And then I can put my brush in water, tap, 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 and just kind of go over my yellow and white to help the colors blend together a little bit better. So you don't want to see that perfect line in there. You want to add some yellow and white, kind of in this strip and right here in the middle. Kind of flicking with my brush. You can kind of go back and forth as much as you need. You can even have some flicks coming off from the side if you want. So yellow and white, you can tap some off on your paper towel and kind of go in there and break up that perfect line where the two meet. And you can even add some yellow and white on the sides. Yellow and white on the sides where the two kind of meet. And if you need to use water, tap it on your paper towel and smooth out your yellow and white. Perfect. Take your time with that. If you ever feel like you have too much of one color on there, you can let it dry and build on top. Another thing you can do is let it dry, build white on top of it. Let the white dry and then go back to whatever color you'd like. But once you're done, you can go ahead and wash and dry your big brush. Make sure all that yellow and orange and white and light blue is off of it, because we're going to start working in the water area. And if you're still working in the sky area, go ahead and pause on the video and take your time, and then join us whenever you're ready to start working on the bottom half. All right. Once you're done with the sky and you're done washing and drying your big brush, you're going to jump to your dark blue paint, and we're going to create some dark blue down here, and then kind of more in the middle area coming off from the side. So let me show you how. I'll just make a line, almost a ruler's width, a little bit thinner from the bottom of my canvas with my dark blue. Then I'm just going to sweep side to side, even kind of going over the line a little bit so I don't see that perfect line. And again, I'm sweeping side to side with my big brush. I'm just in the direction that my water is kind of moving. And you don't want to see any white peeking through down here. I do want to paint the sides and the very bottom with my dark blue as well. So I'll kind of turn it over. Turn it over to the side as well, other side. And the very bottom of my canvas. I always paint all four sides just to have a nice clean look. A thin strip of blue down here. Break up that perfect line, just maybe just little sweeps over it. Once I'm done with the area down there, maybe a little bit thinner than a ruler's width, don't forget the sides and the bottom. Then I'm going to work my way a little bit further up. I'm going to make this line in the middle. It's kind of like we did on top where we split it in half. Gonna come up a little bit, come down a little bit, and thicken it. So I came up a little bit from my line, came down a little bit from my line. I'm gonna smooth out all my paint. I want to paint the sides where it curves over. And on the right side, I do want to come down a little bit lower and flick in from the right. So I'm just kind of flicking in towards the middle. This is about the middle right here, so it's kind of coming towards the middle with my dark blue. You can even bring some dark blue over to the side where it curves over. So I'm just kind of flicking in. And then same on that left side, I'm going to come down and flick in from the middle as well, or towards the middle. Like so. Let's go over to smooth it out. No bumps. You're gonna make sure you get all those white areas and those two areas of dark blue. Don't forget the very bottom. Perfect. And while I still have some dark blue kind of left on my brush, I'll go in there and just kind of sweep some side to side, maybe some a little bit closer to my horizon line. So some over here to the right, some in the middle, sweeping side to side, maybe some over here on the left. Go between these two and just kind of sweep some darker blue lines. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And before my dark blue dries, I'm not going to wash my brush with the dark blue paint. I'm going to jump into that lighter blue. And I'm going to kind of work in these white spaces a little bit more by just kind of flicking my brush. So pretty much just kind of going in there, flicking my brush side to side. I'm going to overlap over the blue a little bit too, so it doesn't look very stripy. I want to have a blending area where they kind of work together. If you have too much dark blue on there, you can always wipe it off on your paper towel and then go back to more light blue. Just kind of filling in those white spots. Again, overlapping over the dark blue as well. Wiping it off if I get too much dark blue on my brush. overlapping. Making sure I don't go too much into the yellow. I want to maybe even drag my big brush with my light blue from one side to the next so I have a nice clean line. Again, just going back and filling up all that white space with my light blue. Sweeping side to side. Don't forget the sides where you still have some white peeking through. I'm going to go back and kind of clean up this light blue horizon line. I'm just going to drag my big brush. Make sure it's straight as it can be. Go back, find some of those white areas. It's okay if the light blue and the dark blue touch. You want them to kind of overlap as well. Once I was done kind of covering up all those white spaces with my light blue, I'm gonna wipe it off on my paper towel and just go back to more water. Tap it on my paper towel. I don't want too much dark blue on there, so add water, make sure there's not too much dark blue on there. Tap it on your paper towel, good amount so it's not too watery, and then I'm just gonna go over the light blue a little bit to smooth it out. Again, if you catch too much dark blue, you can wipe it off on your paper towel, add some more water, tap it on your paper towel. Just kind of go over it and sweep. And I am going over my dark blue a little bit too, so that blends with my light blue a little bit better as well. But I don't want to completely go over my dark blue because I don't want to add too much light blue in those sections. So I wiped off the dark blue, added water, I washed my brush, added water, tap, 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 and went over my light blue, side to side with my water. Water, tap, tap, tap. And if you still need to get your light blue lighter, you can wait for it to dry a little bit and then go back over it so it becomes a little bit lighter as well. We are going to add a little bit white to it in just a moment too, so you can line it up with that as well. But you want the two to be working together nicely. Be sure to kind of overlap just a little bit, the dark blue. And then wipe it off on your brush so you don't have too much dark blue blending with the light blue. You want the light blue to be on its own as well. Take your time with your dark blue, your light blue, and adding water. But once you're done, you do want to kind of wash off a lot of that dark blue and light blue. Tap it on your paper towel. I'm going to add just a tiny bit of white. Tap that on my paper towel. And closer to where the sun is, I am going to kind of add some sweeps of white. So close to my horizon line, I'm going to add some sweeps of white. And I will kind of add some down here a little bit where my light blue is. Maybe a little bit right here as well. So close to my horizon line, I put white on my big brush. Tap it on my paper towel. Oh, excuse me. Still had a lot of blue on there. White, tap, tap, tap. And sweep some white closer to my horizon line. I did add a little bit here to the left, and I did add a little bit here to the left down here as well. Maybe down here a little bit where my light blue is. So I kind of followed the trail of my light blue with just a little bit of white. So I can have those dark, medium, and white areas. And I'm gonna wash my brush, tap it on my paper towel, and just go over that white, sweeping, so that white works a little bit better with my light blue. So just a little bit of white swept over my light blue here and there. So I have some my lightest areas working in there too. You can kind of mess with this, get it exactly how you want. Make sure you have those side to side movements and you have your dark, medium, and lightest areas. You can always let it dry and overlap too. And just be aware that wet on wet paint blends together, so just might to give some things drying time. The next step, we do want to make sure our big brush is really washed and dry. And again, if you're still working on this step, you're welcome to push pause on the video before you move on. So I'm going to wash and dry my big brush. I'm going to go over to my nice clean small brush that I haven't used yet. You might want to give your light blue some more time to dry before you do this step. So if you just want to watch for a moment, all I'm going to do is take my small brush and my white paint, not in the middle, just a little bit over. I'm going to make a rainbow shape with my white. So not quite in the middle, just a little bit over. Make a rainbow shape. Look at the distance on the left versus the distance on the right. And look at how far up my sun goes. So about halfway up from where we made that yellow strip earlier. And then once I'm done, I can go back to my small brush and my white paint and just paint it side to side. Just a little bit of white on my brush. I don't want it to be too thick on there. I can just kind of slowly even bring in some of the paint I used for my line, my rainbow line earlier. So white, a little bit, kind of looks hazy, right? Not too bright. I don't want it to be too solid. It's okay if the yellow is still peeking through. There you go. With that white on your brush, you can even add some up here. If you still have a little bit of white, you can tap some on your paper towel. I just like to add a little bit of haziness here and there. Make sure you don't have anything but just a little bit of white on your brush. Just a little bit of white. You just want to sweep back and forth. And if it doesn't look too smooth, you can always add water. Tap it on your paper towel. I'm just going to go over your white with a little bit of water, so you can add a little bit of haziness here and there. So white, tap, tap, tap. Just a little bit of haziness in the sky. My small brush. If it's not working too well, you can always add water. Tap it on your paper towel. I'm just going to smooth it out a little bit more. But I did just sweep a little bit of white here and there. If you want your sun to be brighter, you can always let it dry and then go over it with another coat of white to brighten it up. But be sure it's nice and dry where it's not too shiny anymore. Give it a couple minutes before you go in there. But again, you definitely want to see a little bit of the yellow and some of the orange even maybe peeking through. I'll just add a little bit more white here and there. Just a little bit of haziness. I always smooth it out with some white. The water on my brush, excuse me. Perfect. All right. Before I do build anything down here, which is what my next step is, my kind of rocky area, I do want to make sure this part down here is dry. So you don't want to see these wet spots on your canvas. So be sure before you start on your rocks, your water area is nice and dry. You do want to start out with your small brush and wash it and dry it. And you're going to start off with your black paint, and you're pretty much going to go in there and outline the shapes of your rocks first, and then we'll go in there and fill it in with black and then with a little bit of white, creating some gray light on there too. For the sake of the video, I'm just going to keep mine going, but be sure you're done with your sun before you move on. And you want to wash and dry your small brush. And again, you're welcome to push pause if you're still working on the sun area. Black paint, small brush. I'm going to start up here. And I'm going to come a little bit lower down from my horizon line, just a little stripped out. I'm going to make a line with my black paint. Again, be sure your paints are nice and dry down here. I'm not going to go quite to the middle. So this is my middle area right here. Just off to the side, I'm going to make a line coming down. And then I'm going to, with a little bit of a wiggle, maybe a little bigger one right here, dip down, come up. I'm going to go off to the side on that one. I'm going to make the first shape of my rock. So I came down a little bit, made a line going side to side, a little bit of a hump, a little bit another hump, and then kind of came to a point over here. Let me go back and make a little bit of a wiggle over here. And I don't have to paint the inside of it yet, just yet. I'm just creating the outline for each rock. The second rock is kind of tricky. I'm gonna work a little bit higher than my first one. I'm gonna come down at a diagonal, a little bit lower. I'm gonna turn a little bit to the left, come out, straighten out a little bit, come up, like so. A little bit of a wiggle, and then out. I'm getting more towards the center. I'm gonna come out and down. So that's my second rock. And again, you're welcome to push pause on this at any time. Come out. I'm just kind of laying out where my rocks are going to be. There's another one coming over here, so that's why I haven't really gotten into that space. Again, you're welcome to push pause between each outline of rock. I'm going to come down a little bit. I'm going to make this rock a little bit of a bump, coming down at a diagonal, almost reaching the very bottom. Not coming out as far as this one. And then I can kind of come in straight a little bit more, all the way to the side of my canvas. So it's coming at a little point here. So there's 3 rocks right there. Go back in here and darken them up so you can see them just a little bit better. Just gonna drag my brush, keep it going. I don't want scratchy lines. I want smooth lines for my rocks. And there's another one down here. It kind of overlaps this one a little bit. Doesn't go near as far as that one does. Kind of comes down as a diagonal. Right there. Perfect. So let's see. This may be a little bit over. Excellent. And then you do have 2 kind of minier rocks between this one and this one. There's one that's really flat on the bottom. It kind of goes up and closer to the other one. So you have that one. It's kind of flat on the bottom. And it comes up and then back down. And there's another one over here. Same kind of shape. Doesn't go past this point, comes down just a little bit. Comes up. And kind of straightens out a little bit of a diagonal there. So these 2 are pretty similar shapes where they're straight lines on the bottom, comes up, side to side. Now we'll start kind of working on the left side. We are going to start a little bit lower from the top of this one. So I'm going to bring this over. I'm going to come down just a little bit. Make a little point right here so you can kind of see that it starts a little bit lower. This one I'm going to come down almost to the middle. It's going to be a stop above this one, so it'll stop right about here. So I'm going to come down at a diagonal with a little bit of a wiggle to my brush. Remember, it's going to stop before this one. So a little bit of a wiggle to my brush. And it does kind of straighten out the bottom here. Doesn't go too much past that one. So I have that one outlined right there. I'm just going to drag my brush so you can see it a little bit better. Drag this one too. For my next rock, I'm gonna have one come up and just kind of stop a little bit down here. So I'm gonna come up about right here. So look how much further down I am from the horizon line. I'm gonna come out down to the tilt. And I'm gonna straighten this one out just a little bit. So there's a little bit of a hump with a little bit of a wiggle coming down, like so. And again, you're welcome to pause this video whenever you need. Make this one a little bit darker now that my paint's a little bit more dry. My last one on this one kind of comes up higher than this line. Let's start up, meet up with the other line that we made for our first one. Comes down. It does pass this one, so I'm going to come down at a diagonal and pass that one. Down. I do want to maybe make this one a little more rounded. There we go. So I have that one coming up and down, and as you can see, it touched the bottom of that first one. Okay. And then I am going to create another rock right here. This one's kind of tricky, so if you want to watch, I'm going to make a line on that slant, coming out a little bit further than that one. And then I'm going to come up and then down at a slant right here. So I kind of have that triangle shape, and it's kind of tricky, but it's a little bit of a triangle shape right there. And again, if these are not just like ours, not a problem. Just be sure you have a good amount of rocks. You have some on the right side, some on the left side. Let them have those flat bottoms that the rocks are kind of sitting on. Have those nice diagonal lines, a little bit of a wave. You can always go back and tweak them, which is what we're pretty much gonna do when we go in there and fill it in. So don't feel like it has to be perfect, like the perfect shape or anything. We're gonna go back and kind of mess with them here in a moment. We're not gonna really worry about the sides of this one. We're just gonna work on the rocks on the front of our canvas. So don't worry about having to curve the lines on this painting. Once you're done creating the shapes, again, you're welcome to push pause. If you're still working on them, I'm gonna go back to my small brush and my black paint, and I'm gonna go in there and just kind of fill out everyone, all of the rocks with my black paint. So I'm just gonna go in there. I'm gonna constantly kind of be moving my brush helping to kind of create like a rough feel to the rock. So I'm just going to move my brush in all types of directions. And if you lose the line, you can always go back on the outside of it and drag your brush. Just kind of clean it up. I'm just going to use my small brush and just kind of have it work in all types of directions. I'll go into my second rock, go in there and just move. So I want all my rocks to be a solid black, and I'll go in there in just a moment and add some white to my brush to kind of create some highlights. Come down a little bit, maybe. Okay. If you be sure you're staying inside each space. If you lose your line, you can always use the outside of your brush to kind of drag it. Which looks nice and neat. You want nice, clean lines. We'll find those shapes a little bit later. Just want them to be a nice solid block with no white peeking through, no colors peeking through. And I'm constantly kind of moving my brush side to side, up and down. You just don't want to be in the same spot over and over again. This last rock right here. And same thing on the left side. I'm going to go in there with my small brush and just move it all around. Make sure the outside lines are nice and clean. I'm staying inside the space of each rock. This one over here. This last one over here. And before it dries, actually after it dries a little bit, if you want to go back and give your black paint a second coat, you can. If you can still see some of the color peeking through, you can always go back and give it a second coat once it's dried up a little bit, so you don't see any of the color peeking through behind it. You can just be sure you're moving your brush, but keeping inside each space. If you want to go back and kind of drag your brush to get some of those clean lines back, you can. And before my black does dry, I'm going to go in there and kind of add some white to my brush and add some areas of gray where the light is hitting mostly the top of my rocks. Again, take your time with these, but once you're done painting them all a solid black, give them like a minute or two to dry, and then you can just wipe your small brush on your paper towel. Add a little bit of white to your brush. Tap that on your paper towel as well, so you have just like a gray working together. And this also helps kind of show the separation of each rock too, so I can see where this rock kind of starts. But as you see, I'm just kind of moving my brush, just kind of side to side, working on the top area of this one so I can kind of see where it separates a little bit more, and adding a little bit of a gray. So all I did was add white, tap it on my brush. I don't want to give my black paint too much time to dry, maybe just a little bit. I'm just going to add a little bit of gray, just kind of moving my brush, kind of blending it. If you want, you can add water to your brush. Tap on the paper towel and add water to help it kind of blend a little bit better with the gray. Go to the top of that one. I'm gonna add a little bit of gray. This one looks like it's all black in the original. I don't really see too much highlight on there. I definitely want to make sure that I see the difference between. I'm just kind of pushing down on my brush. Just kind of working it in a little bit. Just kind of pushing on your brush, constantly moving, coming down into the black a little bit. But as you can see, that gray is mostly on the top of the rocks. So let me do another one, so you just kind of get the feel for it. So white, tap, 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 then I can find the top of this one a little bit better. Just gonna work that in there. Just kind of pushing down on my brush. Just always moving it, bringing some down. So just a little bit of white. If you got too much white on there, just let it dry. But I'm just kind of tapping on my brush, kind of helping it blend in a little bit to the black. For these ones down here too, you can add white. Tap some off on your paper towel so you don't have too much. I'm just gonna tap a little bit here and there. I do want to have some areas where it's a lighter gray, darker gray, so you don't want them all to look exactly the same. Maybe have some that are a little bit brighter by adding more white to your brush. Some darker, there's not so much white on your brush. Down here, I do have this one that kind of slopes up. Just kind of constantly moving my brush. This one is a little bit brighter, so I'm gonna make sure a little bit more white. Kind of working off the edges. Right there too. Perfect. Same on the other side. Kind of finding the top of my rocks more. I'm gonna add white. Tap it on my paper towel. Kind of push down on my small brush. Work my way down. Not too much white on there. Coming down a little bit. Maybe adding some light, tap, and just kind of working on the top part of my rocks. White, back up. Remember there was this one right here. I kind of come down and up. Just kind of push down. Find that shape of that rock a little bit better. And then I'm gonna wipe some off. Just gonna overlap over it. Come down into the black rock just a little bit. Again, if you feel like you got too much white on there, just let it dry and then go back to your black. Just kind of pushing down, finding my way down. White, tap it on my paper towel. Does look like there's a lot of white on the left side. I want just a lot of white kind of peeking through on the left side of that rock, and not so much on the right side. So the sun's kind of hitting it a little bit more. Left side. Pushing down on it. This one white, tap, tap, tap. This one, the top of it, really has a lot of white and just a little bit coming down. So maybe come down a little bit further. Work that down. Push down on my brush. Bring it in a little bit more too. There you go. I'm gonna wash my brush really well. I'm gonna dry it off on my paper towel. Again, you're welcome to push pause if you're still working on your rocks. So no rush. Once you are done with your rocks, you can again wash your brush, dry it, and do your best to kind of bring your brush to a point. You don't want too much water in there. I'm gonna just kind of twist it and bring it to a point. I'm gonna start building the lines for my trees. When I build the lines for my trees, I do want to make sure there's space between each one of them so I can build out. Also want to be sure that they're different lengths, always kind of comparing which one's taller and which one's shorter. And I also do have to remember the harder I push on my small brush, the thicker the line becomes. So always kind of have that in mind. So with this one, the lines are really thin. So you just want to be on the tippy toes of your small brush for this one. So again, I bring it to a point. If you want to watch where I build my lines first, and you can jump in once I'm all done. So small brush, black paint, just barely push on that. All right, let's go ahead and begin on the left side. Again, if you want to watch first, and then you can build all your lines after you've seen it laid out. I'm going to come off a little bit from the left side of my canvas. I'm going to start up here. Just going to barely push down. Go into the rocks a little bit. I always have a little bit of a wiggle to my brush, but try to keep that line as straight as you can. And I came down and onto my rocks. Go back to my black paint. A little bit of space. This one is much shorter, so I'm going to kind of start in the middle of this one, leave a little bit of space. Come down into my rocks. This one's pretty mini. Leave a little bit of space. Down. This one's definitely much taller, but not as tall as this one. Start up here, kind of where the yellow and the blue meet. Go back over this. Like so. So those four right there. And then I'm going to start on the right side. I start off the edge. This one is again where the yellow and blue kind of meet. I start off a little bit from the right. And this one actually sits on this rock right here, about stops about there. So that's that first line. This one I'm going to come up a little bit higher. And it's going to sit a little bit of a space between that one. So, and it is about the same as this one on the very left, maybe even a little bit taller. that. Again, I always have a little bit of a wiggle to my line, but you definitely want to keep it as straight as possible. Perfect, just that one. I'll cover it up a little bit later too. Mine is obviously a little bit slanted. All right. And then I'm going to leave a little bit of a space. The third one also falls on that rock. It's shorter than this one, so I'm going to start a little bit lower than this one. Give a little bit of space. Come down right there. And then this one is not as tall as this one. It ends right about here. So I'm going to come up. Right about there. Except those 4 lines on that side. Again, if you are still working on it, you're welcome to kind of push pause on the video. One thing I think I do want to do with this one is I do want to extend this one out just a little bit on the bottom so I don't lose too much of that rock. So I'm just going to bring that rock out just a little bit further now that I look at it, just so I don't lose too much of that rock behind all those really pretty trees. So if your last tree kind of ends where your rock ends, go ahead and just bring it out just a little bit so you don't lose some of that rock. I'm kind of afraid that I'm going to lose some of that rock right there, but I think that just makes it a little bit more clean to where there's not too much going on that actually extends out. That looks a little bit better. Maybe even build up a little bit more so you don't have too much kind of interfering with your trees. Does that make sense? So just kind of build it out a little bit more. Kind of made this space a little bit more full too, to where it's not going to be too full here on the edge. So I just kind of extended out this line, went back and just kind of cleaned up that rock just a little bit on the top side. Kind of came up at a tilt, made sure it was still kind of pointy, like so. I just don't want to take away from my trees and my rock. I want it all to kind of work together. And that one was all black, so you don't have to worry about going back and adding any light. Just kind of fills this space up a little bit better. All right. Once you're done, you can go ahead and wash and dry your small brush. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding in pretty much the leaves to my trees by using my bigger brush. I would definitely recommend doing a practice run. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do one on my paper towel. It's kind of dirty, but I think you'll be okay with seeing it. So let's say I have my line built already on my paper towel. I'm going to do a practice run, kind of filling in my trees. I'm going to take my big brush and my black paint, and I'm going to avoid the very bottom area and just going to jump back and forth, almost like a zigzag, with my bigger brush, just so I can kind of get a feel. So I'm just kind of jumping with my big brush, going in a zigzag, and then going back and filling in my tree. I don't want my brush to be too wide, so I'm just going to squeeze it together so it's thin. I'm going to show you how. Again, do a practice run. I'm going to show you on my canvas now. I'll start with this one right here. So I'm going to come up a little bit from the tip of the rock. I'm just going to jump, kind of zigzag, side to side. I'm going to come up a little bit further. I do want the outside or the bottom part to be a little bit wider. Just kind of zigzagging back and forth in that line. Even add a little bit of a point to the top of my tree by kind of making it like look like the number 1. So I'm going side to side. My brush looks more like a minus sign. Going side to side. And I do turn my brush up and down more vertical to kind of get the top part. I do want to make it wider if I want up here, but I definitely want the bottom part just to be white as well. Go back for more black. Hold my brush more like a minus sign. Make sure there's not too much on there. Come up a little bit from the bottom. I'm just gonna zigzag back and forth on this line. I do want to come down here and make this a little bit wider so it's more like a triangular shape. I can fill it in more if I need to. I can go back. And then I do turn my brush more vertical for the top to get a little bit more pointy. Go back and kind of fill it in again, kind of jumping with my brush side to side. Like so. More black. This one I'm going to come up a little bit. And again, jumping diagonal side to side. Making sure the bottom is a little bit thicker, and then I can come up here. Turn my brush in a vertical, kind of up and down like a number 1. Giving it a point. You do want the kind of the points on the top of your trees. It brings it together nicely. Black. I'm going to come up a little bit from the bottom. Again, just kind of zigzagging back and forth, jumping with my brush side to side. Come down here, up a little bit, maybe fill it out a little bit more. I can turn my brush more vertical and just kind of pat it on top, create those pointy tops. Tree. All right, for my next one, do the same up here. I'm gonna kind of work down here close to the rock, just a little bit further up, kind of zigzagging back and forth, jumping with my brush, going side to side. You can always go back and make my lines wider. And come back here and just kind of go out a little bit further so it's more of a triangle shape. Fill it in a little bit more here and there. I'm going to turn my brush more vertical. And it's nice to do a practice run so you just get a good feel of it. And you don't want it to be totally solid. You want to definitely see that sunset in the background. This one, same thing. I'm going to come up just a little bit. Just going to jump back and forth with my brush. It's okay if they kind of meet. I'm going to definitely go back and make this one a little wider on the bottom. It looks more triangular. And come up. A bit more pointy, like so. Same with this one. I'm going to come up a little bit so you can kind of see the separation between the rock. And I'm going to turn my brush more vertical, so side to side, more horizontal, jumping side to side. And then last but not least, I'm going to start a little bit lower down on this one where it does meet the rock. So I'm going to kind of come out a little bit from the rock, zigzag jumping with my brush side to side. Turn my brush more vertical to kind of get the top. Definitely want to go in there, overlap over the sun a little bit. If your sun is a little bit further to the right, not a problem. I go in there and fill up that space like so. You can take your time, no rush. And make sure that space looks nice and full. You can go ahead and wash and dry your brush. Again, you want to make sure they have that triangular shape and they have a pointy top. And then wash and dry your brush. And then I want you to really wash and dry your small brush. You can even give your small brush a hug with your paper towel so you get all that black off of it. So I washed my big brush, really washed my small brush. Again, if you're working on this step, take your time. But the last step for this painting is small brush, a little bit of white and light blue. So white and light blue on my brush, the small brush at the same time. Tap it on my paper towel. And then I do want to go in there and just sweep some lighter blues closer to my rocks. Here and there. Once I'm done adding these sweeps going side to side, my light blue, my white, I am going to add some water to it so it kind of blends in, because your water is probably, your dark blue and light blue is probably dry by now. Just kind of go in there and just add some sweeps. Light blue, you can kind of get closer to the rocks too. I'm going to add some water. I'm going to tap it on my paper towel. Just go over those to kind of smooth them out a little bit more. If you feel like you got too much on there, you can always go back to your dark blue or light blue and just kind of cover them up just a little bit. Remember, the harder you push on your brush, the thicker the line becomes. Kind of just go over them, just smooth them out. And then just a little bit of waves in there. Before they're dry, you can add kind of some more water to them to thin them out or move them out a little bit more, so they actually have a chance to thin out just a little bit. Again, if you feel like you put too much of this on there, just let it dry. You can always go back to more light blue and dark blue. But all I'm doing is adding some sweeps of light blue and white on my brush. And I use a little bit of water to kind of help spread it out just a little bit. Barely any on my brush. Getting close to my rocks too. And while they're still wet, you can kind of move them around and make them a bit thinner. So, perfect. I think one thing that I would do, that I see that I would want to kind of tweak a little bit, is I think I'm going to wash and dry my brush really well. Just add a little bit more white to my sun, just to make it just a little bit brighter, so you can see it just a little bit more. Still being able to see the yellow kind of peeking through, but I feel like it got lost just a little bit when I find it back. Be careful of any black paint that's still wet, but I wanted to kind of add a little bit of white. There you go, and there is your beautiful Rocky Cove painting. I hope you had a great time. If you wanted to go back and tweak anything, remember, if you have a wet color, you have to let it dry before you put anything on top. Otherwise, your beautiful painting is all done. Thank you so much, artists, and have a beautiful day.